Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I am Richard Dugan, and I am your host, along with a gentleman who is here locally here in Santa Barbara and is connected with the university and so forth. We're going to find out more about that as well with Patrick Lindley. He is a composer, musician. He's a graphic artist, man of all, a man. I don't know if he likes the word Renaissance man, but thank you so much for being with us to have a conversation today about your perceptions, your experience of music and its impact on us all as a collective species, but also as individuals as well. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Going back to my childhood, my parents said I was whistling melodies from Bach cantatas when I was 3. And when I was 3 years old, I was also dancing to music in the living room in my underpants, which caused consternation for my 2 older brothers. But then I found out years later that singing and dancing are the most natural forms of artistic expression for all little kids in any culture, regardless of the century or, whatever, or country of origin.
Yeah, and that does seem to raise this this element that I've talked about many times on the program, having to do with our childhood and people trying to find, as adults, trying to find, for example, their life's purpose and being happy. And what I have discovered in my own life and also in the lives of others, including yourself, as you have described your childhood, when we go back into our childhood and we take a look at those things that we had fun doing, that we weren't getting paid for, that made us happy, that brought us joy and contentment as well, it's like, well, there's your answer right there. There's your life's purpose. Do what you did when you were a child, in terms of the singing, and in your case, obviously, instrument. How many instruments do you play?
Well, I play all the keyboards. I started out on the piano, then I became a professional harpsichord player for many years, and played the organ and the synthesizer and anything with a keyboard, toy pianos or synthesizers, anything, clavichord. I played the clavichord a lot. I have one in my office at school. And I also play Native American flute.
Ah.
And I'm a singer. So, and I studied dance for 10 years. I think that, I know that the process is more important than the product. I have a musical friend of mine that we go on a hike every week, and he trained in Senegal as an African dancer, drummer, and singer. And we talk about this all the time, is that the process is way more important than the product. I mean, people in America and in the 21st century are obsessed with product and fame and celebrity, and that's fine. I'm not. There's nothing wrong with celebrity and fame, but I think it's more important to be prolific in anything that you practice as an artist or a musician or a dancer or a writer.
Mm.
I think the more prolific you are, the more you have a chance of improving on a daily basis, even if it's small incremental improvements, which is all one can hope for.
Yeah.
Ultimately. Um,
What about your family? You obviously you said as a child growing up, you were humming and so on and so forth and dancing. But what about your siblings and your parents? Were they musical? Were they artistic in that fashion?
yes, both my parents were played the piano very well. My father was a really good improviser. My mother was a really good sight reader. Uh, and we came from a family of artists and musicians and actors and directors on both sides. My siblings and I did. So we had generations of people in the arts as well as the business world, but primarily the movie industry, especially on my
Mhm.
father's side. So that certainly influenced growing up. My older brother David was a rock musician who played with Jackson Brown and a lot of people.
Mm.
He unfortunately passed away of long-term effects of COVID about 3 years ago,
Mm.
and that was really sad. But I had an aunt who won an Academy Award for a film called The Farmer's Daughter. Her name was Loretta Young.
Mm.
And my father's sister, and one of my father's other sisters, Georgiana Young, married Ricardo Montalban, who was a very famous Mexican actor who played Khan in The Wrath of Khan, and he was in the TV series The Plane.
Ah,
Uh,
yes,
yeah,
Fantasy Island.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
Which,
Rich
by the way,
Corinthian leather.
yes, I was just going to say, yeah, he wore suits made of Corinthian leather.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you come from the kind of stock that would facilitate the things that you do, but you've found your own path. Are there particular genres of music that not just that you like, but that you write and or compose?
I'm very eclectic. Most Californians are allowed to be eclectic. I lived on the East Coast went to school there, went to school in Boston and lived there for 10 years. And I lived in Europe for 2 years with a travel study grant to meet people in my field, which at the time in the 70s was playing the harpsichord and the organ. So I suppose you could say I was an expert in 17th and 18th century music. But I'm basically interested in all forms of music, all genres of music, and I write in many different genres. I'm more proficient, I suppose, in European dead guys and gals music, ultimately.
That's a good way to put it.
And because that's what I was exposed to as a child. But my father had a huge collection of world music, African, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, everything, South American. And that influenced all of us 5 kids, because there was just every conceivable kind of music was played 24/7.
It's interesting because you were immersed in it because of your parents in that fashion, because they were musicians. My parents immersed us in it because though they were also musical, primarily singing, my mother and my father, he also played the harmonica and the ukulele and so forth. And we all learned to sing the traveling songs that we sang, working on the railroad and all that kind of stuff. They wanted us to be exposed to as much uh, music types and genres as was possible. And then we obviously would choose our favorites and so forth. I actually joined a CD club back in the 80s. It was a Columbia classical music CD club. And I
Oh,
still have all those.
I was
Yeah,
a member of that too.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I got records every month.
Yeah, and I would work at the radio station. We did 8-hour shifts back then in Phoenix, and I would come home when I was married to my first wife, and we were living in a trailer. And I'd lay down on the couch. I'd put on one of these CDs, and of course, I'd fall asleep. But there was just something about that. And I want to kind of divert a little bit, but still in the classical music realm. Are you familiar with what has had mixed reviews? And that is this concept, this theory called the Mozart effect.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I know a fair amount about it.
Can
Uh,
you share from your perspective, first of all, for those who don't know, and I'm not going there, I'm gonna let you do it, what it is, and then your perspective on it.
all right. The Mozart effect was a theory. I forgot the name of the guy, but that if you played Mozart before you studied for an exam, that it actually made you smarter. And there was there were some statistics to prove that you were demonstrably smarter and did better on the test than if you'd not listened to Mozart. I think I might be mistaken, but I think they discovered that the effects didn't last longer than a few hours or something.
Hmm.
But having said that, I believe that a composer like Mozart, for instance, is so fascinating to so many people throughout history since he wrote the music. It's the same with Bach. I would go a little bit farther with Bach, that Bach, for many musicians, is the most fascinating. I wouldn't say the most. He's one of the most fascinating figures in Western music for the last 500 years. But Beethoven and Mozart are not far behind. And there are plenty of others too. I'd add maybe 20 other composers to that list that I think uh, actually can improve your brain functions if you listen to them and study them and play them. They do know, to leave the Mozart effect just slightly for a minute, they do know that from doing studies of children's brains that uh, playing a musical instrument at an early age helps to develop both hemispheres of your brain. It's something, and if you involve rhythm and timing and rhythm and movement, dance, this has all kinds of positive implications as to your brain development and to your increasing your general intelligence. And as we know from the Greek civilization, that music was considered a branch of mathematics, and it was part of the what's called the quadrivium. I'm getting very academic now, and I'm using my academic voice because I worshipped English culture, British culture. When I was a child, as did my parents, and as the actors in the family. Uh, so I don't want to get too egghead about this because after we have to move constantly just to make sure that we're not ossifying and sitting in a chair, because sitting in chairs is not supposed to be good for our pelvises or our spine. Hunching over a computer,
Mm.
if I'm doing this for hours a day, that's not nearly as useful as stretching every 20 minutes you're using a computer. There are all kinds of things. I feel that one of the challenges of living in the 20th century and one of the opportunities is there's nothing wrong with merging with technology and using technology to increase human enjoyment of life. But I think you still have to, but I think, I won't say but, and I think it's important to be out in nature and to get to know creatures other than human beings at the same time that you might be augmenting your intelligence by merging with the cloud electronically or whatever is happening now.
Uh,
And that's all those things are fine. I'm not
yeah,
against augmenting human intelligence,
sure.
but to lose biological functionings and biological bliss, let's put it that way, biological bliss is better than boring sitting on your butt doing the
Yeah.
computer 12 hours a day without getting up and stretching every 20 minutes. I mean, I'm
Well,
I'm old I'm old enough now that I have to get up and stretch every
Yeah,
we've been on the air now for how long? My face is disappearing, so sorry.
that's
Uh,
all right.
there we go.
You
But
do what you
that's
need to, you do what you need to do. I want to one more question regarding the Mozart effect. Do you know why Mozart was selected as opposed to Bach or Brahms or Rachmaninoff or anybody else who writes these incredible compositions?
well, I think Mozart is a very interesting combination of childlike glee and incredibly erudite musical construction. First of all, he was a tremendous prodigy who was writing unbelievable operas and symphonies when he was 6 and 7. His father, Leopold Mozart, was a great musician himself, a violinist and a composer. And in fact, Haydn, who was a multimillionaire, Haydn was much older than Mozart, but Haydn went to Mozart's father uh, and Leopold Mozart, and he said, I want to tell you, Leopold, that your son is the greatest composer known to me, either alive or dead. And he said, I will do everything I can to help him. And he did. Mozart died a pauper in his 30s. Haydn lived until he was a late 70s and was a multimillionaire. He was the most popular composer of his day and a brilliant businessman. And an equally great composer uh, with Mozart, I would say. And they played in the same string quartet together. Mozart dedicated a lot of pieces to him. Haydn helped him in every way he possibly could. So the point is that the genius guys, a lot of them knew each other and were very close friends. There wasn't any rivalry between Haydn and Mozart because they both were very secure in the fact that they were devoted to music, and devoted to music doesn't mean that you're self-consciously thinking of yourself as the greatest genius who ever lived.
Hmm.
That they might have known that they were good musicians and artisans and fashioners of music, but it wasn't until Beethoven came along that the self-conscious idea as the composer as a godlike figure, that was an outgrowth of the development of the Industrial Revolution, when the social classes were all rendered topsy-turvy by the French Revolution and the American Revolution, and consequently artists and musicians who were treated like servants in the 18th century at the time of Mozart and Haydn, in the 19th century with Beethoven, became the social status and intellectual status of musicians became infinitely higher because of the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment, all those things. Uh, and Mozart was right in the middle of the Enlightenment. So was Haydn. Haydn was older, however, and Beethoven straddled both the 18th and the 19th centuries. So the idea of an artist, a musician, or a painter as a self-conscious, godlike figure, that didn't really come into social fashion until the 19th century. So with Mozart, I would say that it's the combination of childlike spontaneity and incredible erudition. And he composed over almost 600 works, and he died in his 30s. I mean, he was incredibly prolific. He just couldn't stop. It was like a flood. And
Mm.
Mozart's music and Bach's music too, it emerged fully formed. It was already composed in his head. He didn't have to work on anything. He just scribbled as fast as he could to get all the music out. So I would say that Mozart has a kind of universal appeal. They all have universal appeal. All the composers you mentioned, Rachmaninoff and Bach and let's say Stravinsky, contemporary composers that are in
Mm.
that class. But
And there are so
class
many.
and yeah,
Yeah.
they're rating them. And let's face it, people. It would be interesting to find out people that listen to Taylor Swift every day, whatever
Hmm.
age they might be, if they know anything about the European dead guys and gals. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. And part of me doesn't care because, what's her face, is making what, $5 billion a day or whatever. Now
Pretty
that's
close. Yeah.
now that's not. Having said that, I will say that there's no correlation, as far as I can tell, in any field between how much of a genius you are and whether you have any business sense whatsoever. There just doesn't seem to be a correlation. There should be,
Yeah.
and with some great people, there are. Some people are extremely good business people and know how to market themselves, or find somebody that can market them. But marketing and intrinsic worth, those are two totally different categories for music. And popularity also doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great piece of music. Although in many cases, the most popular pieces of all the great European masters are often their best pieces because they have wide appeal to many different, cultures,
Yeah.
and it's a mysterious thing, and the cultural elitism is one of the issues that Americans have to deal with because Americans have quite often felt very defensive about our position in European and world culture. And the Chinese, for instance, they've been civilized. They have considered people in the past who are Western to be complete barbarians next to Chinese culture. So Chinese classical music, that's a vast topic. Japanese classical music, Indian classical music is just as old as, much older than anything in the West, and incredibly sophisticated music that most of us, we may know something about it, but it's not part of our cultural heritage, so
Yeah.
we haven't necessarily paid attention to it. But now you've got Bollywood. Bollywood is an incredible amalgam of Western values to some extent and Indian complexity of culture and China has a lot of pop music too
Hmm.
that is based upon American models to some extent because American pop music dominated the market for since the beginning of radio and television and movies, which is movies are arguably the biggest propaganda tool in the history of human beings.
Yeah.
Television movies. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not making a value judgment there. I'm not saying, does that mean that all the stuff that you see on television is crap and that everything that is in books is better? No, I'm not saying that at all. But I also think that Americans are more eclectic by nature because we are a young culture.
Mm.
And so we're attracted to many different old and new and, science fiction like cultures because we don't have centuries and centuries of backlog
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
philosophy, religion, arts,
Yeah. We're talking.
mathematics.
Yeah, we're talking with Patrick Lindley, and we're talking with him about a lot of different things in regards to music, and we're going to continue that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and one of the things that Patrick Lindley has mentioned in terms of the different genres and different cultural types of music, the one thing that has always intrigued me is in the West, but also in the European cultures, and probably others as well, we have what are called the scales, the basic 8 notes. But you mentioned one culture in particular that does not have the eight notes or the scales. They have what are called in the Indian culture the ragas, and I don't know what the number of notes or tones there are, but each increment is a slightly different vibration, and obviously the instrumentation is different as well. That's one of the things that has always intrigued me specifically about Indian music. Uh, is there a particular culture that intrigues you that you've sort of followed, or do you still maintain that eclectic aspect that hey, each one of them has a wonderful contribution to make, and I want to, so to speak, I want to try them all.
I want to try them all. I think when you're talking about the 8 note scale, that's basically you could call it 7 or 8 notes. That's the diatonic scale, which means across the 12 tones, which are the smallest units that we have in Western music. So if I go A, I'll go da da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da. I've done 12. That's the 12 notes. Then it repeats all over again. La 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 la. And la 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 la. I can't go any higher
Yeah, I don't want you to
E.
hurt yourself.
So hey, let's see if I have perfect pitch. I think I was actually a half step flat. Let's go check with the piano.
All right, as he leaves our screen nonetheless and goes to check his note that he is singing there, we're talking with
There we
Patrick
go.
Lindley.
That is an accurate A. I think I probably was close to that note, but if I wasn't, too bad. Ah, that's an A. So A B C D E F G, and then it repeats again. So
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
6, 7. Then it repeats again. But between those notes are the other notes of the so-called 12-note or chromatic scale, which is the smallest distance between two notes that we use, and those are called half steps. So between A and A sharp is a half step, A sharp and B is a half step, B and C is a half step, C and D, C sharp is a half step, C sharp to D is a half step, D sharp, D to D sharp, D, E flat to E is a half step, etc.
Yeah.
So that's the smallest unit. Now Indian music uses quarter tones, which are notes in between those two half steps, between A and A sharp or B flat. Don't get me into that because B flat and A sharp are the same note on the piano. Piano notes. Piano notes are not the same as clarinets or any other instrument.
Well,
Now, you sure this is not getting too nerdy and technical?
No, and the other aspect, I was going to ask the question, and I rejected the question out of hand because based upon what you've already told us, there isn't going to be one particular music or a piece of music or style that you like listening to over another. It depends upon how you want to feel, or maybe how you do feel, as to which kind of music you're going to listen to. Would
That's
that be a
right.
fair assessment?
Yes, and because of radio and recordings, I was in the fortunate position, having been born in 1947, that I had instant access to, God, almost everything. Even because I was at the beginning of the long playing record era and the 45 era. So you've got 78 records spun, blah, 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 and then 45 spun a little slower, and then 33 and a third discs spun even slower, but you could fit a half an hour to almost 40 minutes on each side of a 33 and a third disc platter. And so I saw the technological advance from 78s to 45s to 33s to cassettes to CDs to streaming.
You left out a couple. One is, and I used to listen to talking books for the blind when I was growing up, and they were 1 7/8 revolutions. And then, of course, there were the 8 tracks. There were the 8 tracks. But even before all of that, you had wire and wax recordings, which fascinates the heck out of me as to how in the world they were able to record onto a cylinder of wax or a wire. As a matter of fact, I was looking at a video just recently of a guy who had these 2 spools, and it was of a wire recording. And I got bored with his explanation, so I kind of moved on. But that they were actually able to record sound on a piece of wire. That's extraordinary. The innovations that we have gone through literally in just less than a century. It's just phenomenal, really.
And we know with the exponential growth of technology. I mean, I had an instance. I've been doing AI generated art for a while now, and when I first started with Google Bard a few months ago, and then graduated to ChatGPT, the verbal prompts that I would give the ChatGPT to make a picture involving whatever. 3 months ago, it took 30 seconds to generate each one of those pictures. But if you look at the pictures, the pixelation and the quality of the high definition was not very good. Now, 3 months later, it takes 3 minutes to generate, 2 to 3 minutes to generate a single GPT prompted picture. But the detail is startlingly more clear and
Yeah, it's like going from
high
standard
definition.
television, standard
Yes.
television to HD.
And this just happened in the last 3 months because I clocked it carefully.
Wow.
And I know years ago, this was back 30 years ago, I was working in a Catholic school and church in Monterey Park. And I was a musician for this grammar school, and I had three choirs: a Spanish-speaking choir, a children's choir, and an adult English singing choir. And the synthesizer that I bought, the Yamaha, was $1,000 and had a two-track tape recorder that it was a workstation, but you could record 2 tracks on it, and it had maybe 100 sounds. I bought the next model a year later, same price, $1,000. It had a 6-track tape recorder and over 2,000 sounds available to choose from. So within a year, 30 years ago, the technology had jumped in a year to something that was the same price, but offered almost 6 to 10 times as much possibility of stuff to do with it. Now, all bets are off as to how fast these things are developing in terms of musical instruments. Yeah. I also use extensively a German software based in Berlin called Ableton. And you can take one little loop of 5 or 6 notes and you can generate 50,000 hours from that one loop. You can speed it up, you can double it, you can layer it, you can put 500,000 sounds to produce on those 5 notes that you've made the loop out of. It's mathematically, you can have an infinite number of possibilities from 3 to 7 notes.
Let me ask you, because you use AI for this. So if I have written a song and not the notes, but I have the melody, I know what it is.
Right.
And I go to some AI program that would take what the information I'm giving it. Okay, here are the lyrics, and here is the basic melody, and I would sing that melody, or if I had a instrument to play them, and it could then generate a song from. It could wrap around the words that I've already written, the melody and the chorus and so forth, that I would then be able to maybe publish up on or post up on, say, YouTube.
Absolutely. And there are sites that you can go to, and I've used them, where they have 50 different genres of music available. You just plug in the genre that you want. I plugged in romantic orchestral music. And within 30 seconds, it generated 4 samples of about 5 minutes each. One of them was a song cycle with a female soloist singing in Polish, or I forget what language it was. I forgot. It might have been English. But within 30 seconds, I got 5 contrasting examples of romantic orchestral music, kind of conservative, but not from 200 years ago.
Right.
Something that you'd hear in a movie score, for instance, of a chick flick or maybe any kind of action film, whatever. And they were very, very convincing. I have a friend here who's a computer whiz. He's 87 now, but he's an expert in digital marketing. He does websites for people and stuff. He got a picture of himself, and he has an app on his phone that can animate it. And what happens when he's animated this picture, he creates this AI-generated young woman, and he's 78, and this young woman is 25, bodacious babe with, low cut black dress. She walks up to him, kisses him on the cheek, and hands him a red rose. And it's all fake.
Mm-hmm.
The woman does not exist. He just prompts, he manipulates a bunch of things on this app. And so now he has another picture of him and a former girlfriend standing together smiling. And the app animates it, and they turn and kiss each other and put their arms around each other.
I've seen that.
You've also seen the one where movie stars take any big movie star, let's say John Travolta and Meryl Streep. They have pictures of John Travolta and Meryl Streep. They have Meryl Streep when she was first starting out in a film in her 20s, embracing Meryl Streep in the present.
Wow.
John Travolta in Staying Alive, embracing John Travolta now, whatever his last film was, standing and hugging each other. I mean, complete suspension of disbelief and complete melding of the past and the present in the same film cut. I mean,
and that's one of the
insane.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why. And I said this back in 2001 when I was watching the what turned out to be the horrific images while I was living in Phoenix of what was happening in New York on September 11th. And I will be honest with you, the first thought that went through my mind, and there are even those who actually believe this, not because I said it, but because they have supposed evidence. I said, wow, boy, they've really got CGI down. Man, this is unbelievable. And I've even put it in this context to the extent, and again, I'm not saying it didn't happen. Please don't anybody get me wrong.
Yeah,
what I am going to say is, if I was not present in New York in the morning of September 11th, 2001, it didn't happen. All I have are images on a screen that can be, and now here we are, 2025, and that can be done. That can be done.
Yes, it can be. And I knew back in 2000.
That's part of the scary thing about it all. That's the negative side. But the plus is, I'm glad that your friend has a partner in that regard. That's wonderful, but they're AI, they're not real. But hey, if it makes him happy, hey, so much the better.
But that's why I wanted to contrast it with the fact that he also had a picture of him with a real woman who's approximately his own age. Yeah. But then he animated the still picture of them standing together, turning and embracing each other.
Yeah.
So you can fake something that doesn't exist. You can also enhance something that already exists.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's why I used that example, was to point out that it can be used to create something that's, you could say, a complete lie.
Yeah.
And something that is just an enhancement of the truth.
Yeah, Patrick Lindley is my guest, and we are talking, of course, in this particular segment about the contributions that AI can make as a tool. That's one of the things that one of my guests said to me in an interview, because he uses AI to write his books. And he told me, he says, number one, it's a tool. And number two, when he does go to AI to start his book, what AI generates is the first draft. And then he takes and I put it this way. This is my analogy. AI basically pumps out this ball of clay. Now you take it, put it on the potter's wheel, and you shape it the way you want. We're going to continue our conversation here with Patrick Lindley here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host here on the program as we talk with Patrick Lindley. And I'm going to refer to you, so to speak, as the music man because of the conversation that we've had thus far. One of my favorite artists, and it actually is not one of the three that folks hear me talk about all the time, of John Denver and Harry Chapin and Dan Fogelberg, but of Barry Manilow, who wrote a song called I Write the Songs. And it's as if the person who's singing, who's speaking these words, is, I wrote the very first song. And even John Denver, in one of his songs, makes reference to how the wind made the very first song as it blew through the canyons and through the trees and this and that and the other thing. And sound has obviously. I love the joke that if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there, does it still make a sound? And I would argue, yes, it does, because if someone was there, there would still be sound, because just basic physics tells you that there would be sound waves coming off of the hitting of the ground by that tree. But sound has been a part of human existence, and we have gotten so good at, shall we say, analyzing sound and what it can do. Jonathan Goldman, another one of my regulars here on this program, who has an annual event on Valentine's Day called the World Sound Healing Day, and encourages people to do whatever. And he's written a book on humming. And then, of course, there's the whistling. The best I can do is maybe blow air through my teeth, like something. And I can't even do it now. I can't whistle. I used to be able to, but I can't. But there are so many. And then it's not just that. Then there's the rhythm. That's still sound, but now we've got the rhythm. And I want you to talk about this in terms of the aspect of the rhythm of music. And sometimes it is the beat. Someone was telling me that they will, they want to sing along and create, and it's not for any purpose other than their own pleasure. What they start with, though, is they will put on or start the drum beat, you know, maybe on a bongo or whatever the case may be, or put a tape on, or the audio on of some rhythm, and then they will just start to create and hum and sing and so forth. Um, that's, in a manner of speaking, that's sort of our version of AI, is taking that rhythm, and then we project the sounds that we want to make, whether it's a whistle or an external instrument.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's important to realize that, for instance, my reaction to that is all speech of any language, any culture, it's all singing. For instance, singing, because I have perfect pitch. That note was hey, I'll go check it with the piano to make sure it was an A.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
another example too is news. And when they talk and they come to the end of a sentence, it's usually down. And then we da 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 da
that's
da
right.
da da
That's
da da.
singing. If you,
Whereas we, and that's singing, yeah.
I can tell you if somebody says anything to me, I can tell you exactly the pitches that they're using on whatever words they're speaking. Now, of course, it depends. For instance, in America, a lot of really manly guys are supposed to speak on only two tones. You only
Yeah.
speak on two tones. And if you look at films, even films from, the 20s and the 30s, a lot of American actors have a very restricted voice range that they speak in. It's very two or three notes, anything more. But the English actors, of course, you see, modulate their tones from very high notes to very low notes, and it's considered absolutely fine in the culture to do that. And radio announcers, the same kind of thing. I mean, there sometimes, and you feel that some of the radio announcers, it's like they're talking to 5-year-olds. And now, boys and girls, we're going to have breadfruit stuffed with bran flakes for our snack. And when that kind of voice happens, it can sound very condescending, as though you were speaking to a child or a monkey or something, or
Yeah.
some sentient being that's considered less important in the scheme of things than human beings, like an animal or a cat or a
Yeah.
dog or a bird or an elephant or an
Hmm.
ocelot or aardvark,
Whatever it
whatever.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think right there, the idea that, and also the rhythmic aspects of speech, it's all calculated to make a particular emphatic effect in terms of beginning a sentence, middle of sentence, end of sentence. And you're right. When at the end of a sentence, oftentimes the voices do tend to go down
Hmm.
because that signals the person that that's the end of the idea, or the colon or the semicolon is put in, or the period or whatever. And the question mark. A question mark. Look at the people in the South. Everything can. Um, Here I am, a vision in blue. I was in a play, You Can't Take It With You in high school, and the young woman who played the romantic lead opposite me, she couldn't say, "Here I am, a vision in blue," you know, down, blue, down. All she could say was, "Here I am, a vision in blue." She didn't understand if the voice goes up at the end, that doesn't mean the same thing emotionally or even grammatically as a vision in blue.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you
A vision
asking
in
me or are
blue.
you telling me?
So in the South, there are a lot of Southern people where everything sounds like a question, and
Yeah.
that's a particular style of communication that is endemic to the Southern mentality, whatever
And
that
you
might be.
and that is something interesting to touch upon too, and that is that that is part of the reason why we have so much difficulty communicating with one another. For example, just here in the United States, in terms of, let's just say, intonation, all right, that's one element. Then
Absolutely.
there's the vocabulary, and then there's another element that's less tangible. It's the intent. Why are you saying what you are saying? And one of the phrases, well, I shouldn't say phrases, but one of the comments that I make quite often when people are speaking is words have power. Now, going to your point that we aren't just speaking, we're actually singing. It's just a
Now I'm
different
going to,
time.
that's going to change my uh,
All right.
the appearance of my practically bald head,
There you go.
because that was
Well, mine is
dramatic.
complete, so there you go.
Well, the point is that was a good dramatic moment to emphasize what you were saying, which
Yeah.
was, would you mind repeating it?
For our
The in,
audience.
yeah, the intention,
Yeah, the intention.
and that
That's
words have power.
they do, and now the neuroscientists are saying that 60% of any verbal communication from one person to another, about 60 or maybe even 80% is nonverbal. So the
Hmm.
intention and the actual words are only 20% of what's being conveyed by the body language, by the eye movements, by what the head is doing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that it gets it incredibly fascinating. And there are analogies in the world of music because, for instance, remember the things that happened when the CDs first came out. People said, "Oh, digital sound, it's not nearly as warm as analog
Yes.
sound,"
Hmm.
and but it's quieter for sure. I mean, you listen. I had LPs that I got rid of them all a few years ago, but I had LPs that I was dragging around that I'd had since I was 5 years old, but they were so scratched up I couldn't play them, and I didn't
Yeah.
have a turntable anyway. And I said, well, I can get the clean versions by getting CDs of all these or whatever. And I did discover something fascinating, that all the recordings that I played obsessively as a child, I remember all of them from the time I was 5 or 6. I found them all on Spotify.
Hmm.
All the classical stuff
Yeah.
was all on Spotify. And that was a huge thing for me because every record that I, played 100 times in a row was all there.
Yeah.
All I had to do was type it in.
Well, I still have all the albums matter of fact, dating myself here. It's okay though. I don't mind. I'm 65 in June, so I'm not worried about that. My
Well,
very first record album, the very first one I purchased, I still have. The jacket's not in the best of condition, and it was actually, I believe it was their first album that they put out, and that group was the Partridge Family.
oh, really?
I
Uh-huh.
have that one with it's the motif of the
Who
bus.
was in that? I forgot who was in that group.
It was Keith Partridge was David Cassidy,
Oh,
and
okay.
I almost said Florence Henderson. It was Shirley Jones was his mother, and I don't recall all of
Right.
the others. Danny Bonaducci, that was his
Oh, I
brother.
remember him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I will also share with you a side note on not Keith, on David Cassidy, and it was actually sort of a sad aspect on his death.
Hmm.
Do you know what his final words were? And
No.
I thought that is profound. Four, only four words. His last words. So much wasted time.
Oh, that is amazing. That's
And I thought,
important.
on the one hand, I thought, wow, because obviously he must have thought that he wasted so much of his time in whatever things he was doing aside from maybe making movies or television shows or performing. I don't know if he was an actual musician or not. Certainly portrayed one, obviously, in the Partridge Family. But then again, I got more thinking about that and thinking, well, maybe there's some truth to that. But on the other side, then maybe what we need to do is take a long, hard look at our lives up to this point and say, really, was there wasted time? Because this point being, I wouldn't be who I am if it weren't for all of the time from the moment I came into this world. And that includes the music that we listen to as well as that we create. And you've done some incredible stuff in your composing, and we're going to hear some of that as folks listen to this particular interview. It's fascinating to begin this process of talking about the importance of music in our lives. Can you, as we come to the end of this particular portion of our conversation, talk to us about your perceptions of how important music, and maybe there's another word to use, vibration, I don't know, is in your life, and how important you think others should make it in their lives?
Okay, first of all, I mean, I'm going to be a little bit academic now, and music actually, as we know, is a non-specific language.
Hmm.
And having said that, it is still a language, but it's not specific in the way that words are. Uh, Tones can represent spatial relationships, mathematical relationships. And they can tones can certainly evoke emotional reactions. And so, having said that, you can go to the Zen Buddhist viewpoint. There was a famous American composer, John Cage, who was one of his most famous pieces was called, I think it's Stopwatch 4.33 or something. And this piece it's kind of a performance piece. He simply sat at the piano for 4 minutes in silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. That was the piece of music. That's kind of it's a Zen concept. The idea was that any sound that you heard during that 4 and 33 minutes worth of silence is the piece. People breathing next to you, somebody coughing, somebody laughing, somebody tittering, whatever. The Zen approach is that any sound that you hear, you can frame it as an aesthetic experience and call it a piece of music. And when John Cage lived in New York City, he was from California, I believe, or Washington State, I can't remember, but he lived in New York City. He was also a graphic artist, but he loved listening to random sounds of traffic because he said the most wonderful thing about listening to random sounds of noisy traffic all day long is that one sound never repeats itself, which to him was an incredibly fascinating aspect of being a musician and a composer. Because, yes, he liked to use repeated patterns on occasion, but he was also fascinated by all manifestations of sound, whether they seem to have any design to them or not. And I would say that's a good way of describing how I like to feel about all sonic experiences. Is that anything can be framed as a piece of music if you're clever, like you were saying. Taking a fragment of a melody that you like and feeding it into a machine, and the machine, messes with it and comes up with a finished product that can be, very, very impressive as a piece of music. So I think any sound source, whether it's speaking or, trees falling in the forest or anything, running water, can be termed an aesthetic, possibly a musical experience. It depends on your ability to respond to a rhythmic impulse or a melodic impulse or a harmonic impulse or just a random sound. And I think that that's the broader you make your appreciation level for all sound, the more interesting your life is going to be. Whether it's reified or quantified by some recording or sold for money to somebody, that has nothing to do with your right to make any sound that you hear into some kind of aesthetic experience that pleases you or annoys you or motivates you or repels you or whatever.
By the way, AI generates music for you.
Mm-hmm.
Who owns the copyright to that?
I have no idea, and I don't think anybody knows yet. All these things, it's going to be a field day for all the lawyers in the world. Intellectual property right is going to be the biggest burgeoning field in the world of law, because these things have not happened before.
Right.
It's like the people who often talk about, if it's not in the Bible, then it has of no interest to anybody. Well, there's plenty of stuff that's not in any of the Bibles of any civilization that I know anything about. Because it can't be, because a lot of stuff was not invented until after the Bible was written or codified or put together, whatever.
Yep.
I'm not denigrating the Bible in any way.
No. I hear what you're saying.
Denigrating its usefulness. I'm just or worth to anybody. I'm just saying that airplanes do not appear in the Old Testament, as far as I know.
As far as we know, yes. It's interesting too. In addition to my analogy of AI pumping out a lump of clay, then you take it and you put it on the potter's wheel and you make it, you edit it, so to speak, and so forth. And we were even talking about this in this same interview that I was doing with this gentleman, and he didn't agree 100%. I like the look, but he understood where I was coming from, and I said, "Well, wouldn't AI be sort of the antithesis, maybe, sorta, kinda, of a ghostwriter? I want to write a book, but I gonna need someone to help me write this thing."
Yes,
and of course, the ghostwriter's going to get credit. Has got to get credit too. And he says, no, that's, and I get, as I even said that to you, I'm beginning to realize, no, he's right. A ghostwriter isn't the same thing as AI, because a ghostwriter is collaborating with you to create the manuscript. AI does not collaborate with you in that way. And let's say we go ahead and use his example. AI creates your first draft. It's not the finished product. And I think the same thing would be with music. I mean, you get stuff produced by AI, but then you take it and you do with it what you want, right?
Well, okay, so look at the case of all the great painters like Michelangelo or Monet or anybody, particularly in the Renaissance. They had the apprentice system. In Michelangelo's painting studio or sculpting studio, he had apprentices who were allowed to finish, if they were good enough, they were allowed to finish some aspects of a few details of a canvas that maybe Michelangelo had to get out to his, the papal patron who was buying, a depiction of Jesus rising from the dead or whatever.
Right.
He said, "Well, you can paint the shrubbery, on the right hand.
Right.
You paint the leaves on it. You're good enough to do that. Just make sure you use this palette, and I'll check it out. If I don't like it, we'll rub it out and start all over again." And but so there are many works of painting that could have been the work of several people. Look at a film. A film is a collaborative effort effort. It stars somebody, it's directed by somebody, but it involves hundreds and hundreds of people collaborating
Yeah.
and with their expertise to make the film happen. So what's the difference? What is the difference in a sense between that and having AI enhanced suggestions as to what to do with a note of music or a part of a photograph or whatever? I mean, for instance, I noticed that doing things with AI, visual things, the prompts that I give it, often what happens is they're just as arbitrary as human beings. They will leave out some things that you ask for, and they will put in details that you did not ask for.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's just as arbitrary as having a personal assistant who is not doing what you're asking them to do, and then you have to say, "I'm sorry, I'm paying you to do exactly as I told you to do, and the fact that you did not means that I'm going to have to dock your pay for today because you're wasting my time, and you've mean that the book that we're producing that I'm trying to get out is delayed now by 2 days. So you're going to have to do exactly as I tell you, or I'm going to fire you."
Mm.
So what that's the weird paradox about AI is that because however it's programmed, it's not programmed to be. It can't be completely perfect yet because the technology is not good enough yet.
Yeah.
But it
And it'll
will
get
be.
there. Yeah, it'll get there. And by the way, going back to your comment about the sound of CD versus the album, I had a
Right.
friend in those early days who for that very reason, absolutely would say, he says, "I will never, ever buy a CD. Never."
Mm.
Now, what's interesting too, and this is not along the same lines, but one of the things that's been interesting in the progression of music in your day and my day, of course, one of the attributes that has been attributed to the music of, let's say, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and maybe into the 80s was that the music that was created had a fuller sound. Meaning, for example, Dan Fogelberg, John Denver, and Harry Chapin, you will hear orchestration in their music. Not all the songs, but many of them. Okay? You don't hear a lot of orchestration in terms of the depth of music, popular music in the 80s and 90s. I think that's shifted a little bit, but I know too that a lot of synthesized music has gotten better and better and better. For example, oh, I hear violins. No, I'm sorry, that's not violins, that's a keyboard. I have that on my synthesizer. Oh, it's a
Right.
French horn. That's a French horn. No, that's also on my keyboard, and so on and so on and so on. But
Can I speak to that for just a
please
second?
go right ahead.
My privilege as a keyboard player is I'm going to change. There we go.
Oh, totally different. There we go. That's
There
much.
you go.
This is my favorite color,
I like it.
turquoise.
Mine too.
And my privilege as a musician is I feel, and I have some proof of this, that I can make a bottom of the line digital Yamaha grand piano sound as good as any Steinway. I
Wow.
know how to do it because the interesting thing about digital pianos, particularly grand piano sounds, is they can sample any of the great pianos that are made today. The Yamahas, the Steinways, the Faziolis in Italy, Börsendorfers in Austria, Bechsteins, Blutners in Germany. All these pianos are great pianos. And Pleyels in France and Erhards in France, great pianos in France as well. Hope I haven't left anybody out. Young Chang, those are great. Anyway, the point is that you can sample any of those pianos, and I defy anybody. I've played recordings of myself playing the bottom of the line Yamaha portable piano, grand piano sound, and they said, "My God, that's the most beautiful piano sound I've ever heard." I said, "What instrument did you use? What recording studio is it?" I did it in my own apartment with my own equipment. I know how to manipulate the sound. what's true basically of digital pianos, digital keyboards, is that they don't have as much information as an acoustic piano. So the acoustic piano resonates much more, and the depth of the sound is much greater. But you can create that illusion of depth by cleverly manipulating your touch on an electronic piano sound. And a former teacher of mine, I remember, played on Zoom. I played him a recording of myself playing a piano piece. He said, "My God, what is that piano? That's the most fantastic. Who recorded that? It's the most fantastic sound I've ever heard." I said, "It's over Zoom, and I'm doing it live now. I'm just manipulating the sounds because I know what the effect is going to be on the hearers, because I've been recording with electronic instruments for 50 years now, maybe longer, as long as they've had Rhodes pianos and all that stuff. If I can't tell the difference between a bottom of the line synthesizer and the finest Steinway in the world, I defy anybody else to be able to tell the difference. If I can make a really, really bottom of the line synthesizer that costs $500 sound like a $300,000 Steinway, then that's my skill level.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the intrinsic possibility. Now, it's true that on a really great piano that's perfectly regulated in tune, you can do anything. The place where I live, they have a beautiful Steinway in the auditorium that is one of the best, most responsive pianos I've ever played, which is why I moved in here 8 years ago. And consequently, playing on that piano, as much as I've been able to do for the last 8 years, has made me be able to coax beautiful sounds out of all kinds of instruments, which have heavier actions and not as reliable. You just learn how to do it from playing a really great instrument. So there's no question that a really great instrument, you can do things much more quickly and more easily, but you can still, the privilege of every really good keyboard player is to make any instrument that you play sound like the greatest musical instrument ever constructed.
Yeah. It's one of the things. It's one of the things that I have noticed and been in awe of musicians. I learned as a child, I learned to play the piano, the violin, the recorder, and then in high school, the baritone. I wanted to play the trumpet because, number one, it was smaller and lighter, but
louder.
But unfortunately, they already had enough trumpeters, so I was given the baritone. And I don't play any of those right now. It is strictly the voice, the only instrument that I actually do play. Although I do, believe it or not, I actually carry this with me. Why? More sentimental, because it's my father's Japanese-made harmonica.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about that when we talked the last time.
And I pull it out every once in a while, and I'll just kind of move around. And I've got the instruction manual on how you're supposed to play it. Inhale and exhale, and you can keep the music going and so forth. But I just marvel, and I'm in awe of, and appreciate the skill and the ability and the talent that people have for playing these instruments and sticking with them. My sister, for example, my elder sister, who's since passed, as a child had asthma, actually throughout her entire life. Do you know what instrument she played? The French horn. Who does that? And then I found out, I did not realize that it probably actually helped her asthma.
It did. Yeah,
it
probably did.
But she was so good. I think she was even first, maybe second chair in the Scottsdale Symphony Orchestra a few years before her passing. She was that good. And in the marching band as well in high school. So that says an awful lot. I want to remind you folks, you're listening to Tell Me Your Story. You're watching it. If you're watching on YouTube, we're talking with Patrick Lindley, and I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're going to continue here in just a moment. I'm Richard Dugan with Patrick Lindley. And Patrick, I want to thank you for giving us so much time. This has been a lot of fun. I enjoy going down this path with people, with whether it's Jonathan Goldman, yourself, or anybody else who's into music, into vibration, into tone, because that's what exists. And I've even heard it said there are those who can actually hear the sound of the planet. If you can find a place that's quiet enough, out on the ocean doesn't cut it because you hear the water moving. But if you could find a place, you can actually hear, they say, the hum of the earth. And I'm going, boy, that would be interesting to do. I thank you so much for giving us so much time here.
Oh, it was
This is
really great.
extraordinary.
Now it's time for me to put my glasses on again, so that Now, by the way, I'm just curious. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have to be part of the broadcast, but when people are watching this on YouTube, are they seeing your face and my face simultaneously?
Absolutely. They'll see the two of us, and
Split screen, basically, right?
yeah, well, it's a split screen is what it is, and you'll see that when I post it. It'll be up on YouTube for everybody to see, probably only a few hours from the end of this conversation, which I'm really excited about this conversation. And who knows, maybe we'll stay with music, but go in a little different direction next time that we get together, because I would love to talk to you further. But thank you so much. And I do have 3 final questions for you that I ask all of my guests.
Uh-huh.
But before I ask those questions, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at richarddugan.com. Podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Amazon Music, and Spreaker. And we're on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope you will, especially this one, because it's a rather colorful one, at least on my guest's part. And I'm very excited about the fact that he is who he is and he lets it shine, and we're grateful for that. I also want to let you know that Choices, 5 Steps for Life is available on Amazon in Kindle, hardcover, and paperback. Audible is coming soon. And we ask that if you could leave us a tip. Hey, we have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. All you have to do is go to richarddugan.com. There are links to the book on Amazon and to the PayPal account. And we also ask that you take some time. This is an area we could dive into too, Patrick. Take some time during this decade of perfect vision to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to, if you will, the music of that still, small voice. With all of that being said, we now go to our final 3 questions for our guests. I love asking these questions because the answers are always different. Number 1, who is Patrick Lindley?
He's an emanation from an unknown source.
Okay. What gets you up in the morning?
Turning on my electric keyboard, the first thing.
And finally, what was your best day?
Today.
That is one of my favorites. I get that a lot, and I'm glad. And again, I thank you so much for your time.
Fun.
And let's get together again to talk more about this, because I think people need to know how important. I know we need oxygen, and we need water, and we need food, and we need sleep, and other things too. But a life without music is in my opinion is so empty. It's so void of that which really illuminates us as human beings. So please take the time. And with all of that, I thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy, because I am. Hey, Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.